So let's get right into a case that is, well, it's as much a human story as it is a legal one. And it all starts not with a crime, but with a single unchangeable moment in time.
That's it. 6:14 p.m. That is the exact moment a life with the state's full authority comes to an end. It's so precise, so final. But, it's also the last chapter of a story that started decades before.
And this line, wow, this line just says it all, doesn't it? A clock stopped, a curtain slid back, a gurney gleamed under a fluorescent light. This is all about the execution of Norman Mearle Grim Jr. But to really understand that moment, we have to go back, way back.
To really get a handle on that final moment, we have to rewind. Because before all the legal battles and the appeals, there was a victim. There was a life that was taken.
Her name was Cynthia Campbell, and this is where the story really begins. It's so easy for victims to become just a name on a case file, but she was a young attorney in Pensacola, a neighbor, a person with plans, with a whole future ahead of her. And then, one summer night in 1998, she just vanished.
Okay, now what you're seeing here is crucial for understanding the weight of this case. Her body was found near the Pensacola Bay Bridge, and the details, they're brutal. We're talking staggering blunt force trauma, multiple stab wounds. This wasn't just a murder, it was an act of absolute cruelty. And it's that sheer weight that demanded such a powerful response from the justice system.
So where did the investigation lead? Well, the trail of this crime didn't point everywhere. It pointed right next door. Let's take a look at how investigators and prosecutors actually built their case against him. So the prosecution laid out what you could call a chain of evidence. It wasn't one single smoking gun, but a series of links that they wove together. First, you had the physical proof: fabrics, rope, tape, all linking Cynthia to her neighbor Norman Grim's house. Second, you had a timeline that put him right there, trying to talk with her earlier that day. And third, what did he do when police showed up? He ran. That's the combination of facts the jury had to wrestle with. Now, that conviction back in 2000, that was just the start of a very long legal journey. For more than 2 decades, this case wound its way through the appeals process. But then, in 2025, something really unusual happened. Grim himself waived his final appeals. He didn't even ask for clemency. He essentially told the system, "I'm done." And that decision brings us right back to where we started, to that clock stopping at 6:14 p.m. So let's look at the execution itself and what it might mean in a broader sense. In his final moments, Norman Grim said no to meeting with a spiritual advisor. When he was asked if he had any last words, he offered nothing. Think about that. After years and years of lawyers and courts speaking for him, he had one last chance to speak for himself, and he chose silence. The state then pronounced him dead by lethal injection. And this number, this is what really made people take notice. His death was the 15th execution in Florida for the year 2025. You might hear that and think, okay, 15. But what does that number really mean in context? Yeah, this chart really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? 15 is the most executions the state has carried out in a single year since the death penalty was brought back. It's a sign that the machinery of the justice system, after years of stops and starts, is suddenly running hotter than ever. Some might see that as resolve, others might see it as a warning sign. This is where things get really complicated, and it's honestly the core of the whole debate. It's about being able to hold 2 powerful, competing ideas in your head at the very same time. On one hand, the absolute cruelty inflicted on Cynthia Campbell demands justice, the full weight of it. But on the other hand, a system powerful enough to end a human life has to be held to an almost impossibly high standard. It's not one or the other, you have to grapple with both. So, where does that leave us? This final act forces us to ask a really tough question about what happens next. What does closure really truly mean in a situation like this? We throw that word closure around a lot, but what is it? Is it just a legal announcement at 6:14 p.m.? For some people, maybe it is a form of resolution, but for others, it doesn't close a thing. It just draws a final, dark line around a grief that started back in 1998, a grief that's never, ever going away. And that's why, at the end of the day, it's so important to focus on the names, not the numbers, not the legal jargon. We have to remember Cynthia Campbell for the life that was taken from her so violently. And we remember Norman Grim, the man at the center of the state's final act, who, after everything, chose silence. There's this quote that it nails it. Violence, like grace, travels the shortest distances. This wasn't some abstract event happening miles away. This happened between neighbors. It's a powerful reminder that the most profound events in our lives, both terrible and beautiful, often happen in the smallest spaces between people.
And so, we're left with this. It's not a question with an easy answer, folks. A clock stopped. A case file was stamped, closed. But the real work, the hard work of figuring out what justice actually looks like, how you honor that kind of grief while being fair, and how you deliver justice without completely forgetting mercy, well, that work doesn't end. It just begins again, with all of us.